I am so excited about today's video and to get to share this with you all. Today marks my 2-year anniversary on YouTube, and so I thought we would do something different. I'm sharing my 22 most important philosophical concepts that have changed my life. So yes, it's a bit personal, but I promise any of these works for any of you can be useful and beautiful and important and interesting. I'll have them all linked down in the description below. And I'll just be sharing the main quote or passage or concept from each of these, so think of it as a small preview of many Thinking Thursday episodes yet to come. But first, let me just say, thank you. This has been such a wild ride. If you would have asked me a few years ago if I would ever have a channel or a channel like this, I wouldn't have believed you. This will be video number 340 from me in the last 2 years. And I'm not doing a big Q&A and I'm not going to go through all my stats, but I will just say that we've done over 10 million views, over 2 million watch hours, 74,000 subscribers. And most importantly, it's been a place for me to be able to process and learn and share and make a difference. So again, thank you sincerely to everyone who has ever watched one video, to all 74,000 of you that have subscribed, to each person that has left a comment, to everybody who has written me an email even though I can't respond to most of them, to everyone who financially supports me, whether it is through the comments or through Patreon, for those of you that share my work or just encourage me. This channel has obviously become a big part of my life, and I am thrilled to have it. So again, the most sincere of thank yous, and this is just a small way of me trying to give back, because I really believe in the power of these ideas. So let's get to it. I've broken these books into 3 categories in terms of how they have affected my life. I'm calling this first category The Awakening, where I chose the path of thought, where ideas became so important, where I learned how to learn. So in this first grouping, we're going to start with Emerson. I found Emerson in high school and I became a big fan of the transcendentalist thinkers and poets. And in Letters and Social Aims, Emerson has this wonderful quote, and I'm going to read it for you. "Make your own Bible, select and collect all the words and sentences that in all your readings have been to you like the blast of a trumpet." How lucky I was to read something like that pretty early on. I immediately went and bought a special journal from Borders, for those of you that remember Borders. I called it my quote journal. I was a massive reader, and every time that I came across a line that was important to me, I jotted it down. I made my own Bible. This idea of collecting knowledge, of crafting my own sacred canon, was so beautiful to me and has been so useful over the last 2 decades since. It's funny to look back because what I see myself doing even then was building my own personal philosophy. It's an ongoing endeavor and one that I wish for each of you. But let's move on to our next one, which is Socrates by way of Plato's Apology. I'm sure you all know the quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Again, a very early influence to me that thinking is so important, to consider my life, my beliefs, my goals, my desires was paramount. That without deep inquiry, life is simply existence, not true living, and it showed me that I wanted more out of life. And it set forward a drive in me to not live by inherited answers, but instead on hard-won understanding. By the way, none of this is to say I have it all figured out. It is what has been useful to me thus far. And to that end, it would be very false of me not to admit the importance that the Bible has played in my life. This is the book that I read the most. These are the words that I have memorized that still come to mind on a daily basis. As just a book, as just a piece of history, as just a snapshot into ancient literature, I love this book. But because so many people believe in the validity and perfect truth of this book, when it has so many backwards and harmful ideas, it's hard for me to promote it at all. But of course, there are indeed many lovely verses. Even as a Christian, I loved especially Job and Ecclesiastes. But early on, I remember finding a verse in 1 Thessalonians, and even now, it still rings so very true to me. 1 Thessalonians 5:21 says, "Test everything and hold fast to what is good." What a wonderful concept. And that's exactly what I did. It's what led to my eventual deconstruction and deconversion. Just like from Socrates, examine everything. A desire to look close, to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, to hold fast to what is good. What wonderful advice. I have absolutely no problem endorsing that particular verse, which leads nicely into our fourth one, which is The Myth of Sisyphus by Camus. A quote that stuck out to me very early on in my reading of this book is seeking what is true is not seeking what is desirable. Truth is not meant to be a comfort to us necessarily, only to be faced. Can you face the truth? Can you follow truth wherever it goes? There's 1,000 different ways to interpret this book and talk about the absurdity of life and what that means. But first and foremost to me is that truth matters, and it is our job to seek it out at any cost. I tried to build a nice little arc and flow for you, so I hope you see these bleeding into each other. But next we're going to move into the analogy of the cave by Plato, found in the Republic. You'll notice that 2 of my main books back there are missing. It's because they are here. I love these copies. I could just talk about the allegory in general. This is a beautiful concept, and it is so important, and it follows so well what I have already said. But first, let me just give you this quote. You have seen then that enlightenment is not merely the seeing of better things, but a turn of the soul toward the light. True awakening, which is what I've kind of titled this category, requires reorientation. Yes, better information is good. Truth is good. But what do you do with it then? That's what the allegory of the cave is so powerful for. The painful shift of waking up, of realization, of having to take that next step, and then of even coming back to help others. Thus the channel. It's not enough to just know, one must do. That is what we get from Plato. So we're 5 in. Let's move into our second category here. We'll call this one becoming. This is about the struggle. This is about morality. This is about who we are. And many of you who watch the channel might have been familiar with these 5, but I wonder how many of you will know about this wonderful book, Anne Carson's autobiography of Red. There's nothing like this. This book is about shedding illusions, the danger in that, but the necessity in that. Let me read you the quote I have. To live past the end of your myth is a perilous thing. This is what I mean. This is the becoming stage. I didn't know it at the time that I read it, but this is an excellent analogy to deconstruction and to rebuilding one's life afterwards. By the way, we're now moving into poetry a little bit. This is kind of a novel, kind of poetry. Again, I don't even know what genre to put it in. It is so unique. But at the end of the day, it's kind of about growing up. It's about leaving the idea or the ideal of comfort behind and moving ever forward. If you know anything about me, there's absolutely no way that Nietzsche was not going to make the list. I could have made this video about the 22 concepts from Nietzsche that have changed my life. But I went with one of his more famous works, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, because it was the first book that I read, and this line, I remember the day that I read it. I was arrested. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. You can think whatever you want about Nietzsche, but I have a very hard time finding writing that moves me in any way as much as writing like that. What does it mean? It's open to a ton of interpretation, but I'll tell you what it meant to me. That not just greatness, but something even more beautiful, creativity, is born from inner turmoil. That you have to keep that other side of yourself still. Nietzsche calls it the chaos. You might just call it suffering. You might call it hurt. You might call it the struggle in order for the light to matter, in order for truth to do anything. Chaos is not an enemy. It is the raw material necessary for true creation. It's actually a really, really old idea, and it's amazing to me that Nietzsche saw that. Most creation myths have some version of this, that from the chaos came order, that it's a necessary founding or spark or catalyst to what becomes. So beautiful, so cool. Now, the next one makes me so angry because when I went to look for my collection of sayings from Epicurus, I could not find it. So I put a placeholder here, The Consolation of Philosophy by Boethius, because both did the same thing for me. As we talk about struggle or morality or becoming, death is such an important part, not to be morbid, not to have some weird fascination with it, but to come to acceptance with it. And both of these works did that. And funny enough, I've done videos on both Boethius and Epicurus at this point, so I'm not going to beat it at a horse. You can go and watch both of those, but death is not the enemy. Death is is nothing to us, as Epicurus says. More specifically, he says, accustom yourself to believing that death is nothing to us, for all good and evil consist in sensation, and death is the deprivation of sensation. Hence, a correct understanding that death is nothing to us makes the mortality of life enjoyable, not by adding infinite time, but by taking away the yearning for immortality. I remember that so well. It hit me like a ton of bricks, especially as someone who was letting go of religion and the idea of eternal life and having to actually face death for the first time. That's what religion does. It provides an out for all of life's existential questions and sometimes existential dread. And when you lose that blanket, that shield, that veil, some of those stark realities come crashing in. And reading Epicurus was an antidote for me. It's okay. Life is beautiful because it ends. Be present. Enjoy this. Make the most of the one life we get. Probably my second or third favorite book of all time is The Brothers Karamazov. Oh my gosh, do I love this book. And this quote, the mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. Again, like Camus, we get to create our own meaning. Nietzsche said it as well. He who has a why to live can bear any how. It seems to already be a common theme. It's funny, I put these together and I didn't want to give them too much thought. I wanted to go with kind of my first instincts, but the overlap is obvious. It is not just about existence. Survival means nothing without meaning. And it's okay the meaning is subjective, that we get to be the architects of it. What a beautiful, beautiful idea. By the way, everyone should read this book. I don't care if you're an Ivan or an Alyosha. Now, on a bit of a twist, let me give you a specific quote from the Book of Disquiet. Many of you have probably not heard of this book. I don't know how to explain this book. Mad ravings of a insane genius, maybe, who knows? But every line in this book makes you stop and consider and think. Here's one of my favorites. To exist is to be incomplete. Incompleteness is this natural state of being. You have to make peace with the idea that you won't ever know everything, that maybe you can't know anything, that there are no final answers, just an endless, beautiful becoming. It's freedom. It's an allowance not to have to figure it all out. It's appreciating the process. Wholeness is a myth. It's all we get, an evolution of ourselves until it's over. That process is everything. Here's one many of you might not have thought was so important to me, but I love this book, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. How exquisite is this writing? How unbelievable is the capturing of some of the harder parts of what it is to be human? This might be one of my favorite quotes of all time. Here it is. I took a deep breath and listened to the old brag of my heart. I am, I am, I am. This is pure, stubborn existence and identity despite suffering. I exist. I am here. What power there is in actually realizing that simplest of ideas, but most profound. To be alive is to be defiant in a truly gorgeous way. And when you understand this book and the depression that it covers so well, sometimes it's the only thing left to hold on to. I am, I am, I am. Now, I'm going to get some flack for this next one. I don't care. Sam Harris has done a world of good for me. And the very first time that I was introduced to the concept that we might not have free will is when I picked up and read this book. I did it in a short afternoon and my mind was blown. And it set me off on a course to discover more. This book did not convince me in and of itself, but it's one of the things that I have studied and read about most. And there's definitely better books on it, like Determined by Sapolsky. But a quote that stood out to me, and then I'll tell you why this concept is important to me, was this: you are not controlling the storm, and you are not lost in it. You are the storm. Now, I know even most of you won't agree with me in my belief that we don't have free will, at least not in the way that free will is typically thought of. It's a very hard thing to want to understand or to come to terms with. It's a very hard thing to live your life around. It feels like we do. You almost have to pretend as if we do. But even if I'm wrong about this, which I'm more than willing to be, the one framing that it gave me is empathy. Empathy over everything else. I don't always show it. I don't always remember it at the most important times to remember it. But it has truly changed my life to understand that other people are such products of their environment, their DNA, that they didn't choose to be here. They didn't get to choose the parents that they had, the influences that they had, the traumas that they had. The wiring of their brain was so far beyond their control. And if I were them, I would be them. It takes judgment out. It slows down that anger, that initial reaction when we feel wronged or harmed or offended. I only wish I could live my life more consistently under this concept of empathy. But I'm so thankful for that grounding as much as I can have it. And it all started right there. Another cliche one, everyone hopped on this bandwagon, kind of a bro dude lit movement kind of thing. I don't care. Again, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is gorgeous. And so is this book, by the way. Look at this. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love it. This book might be the book I've read most next to the Bible. I've probably reread this book 5 or 6 times at different stages in my life, as a teenager, as someone entering the workforce, when I got married, when I had children, and after I lost my faith. And each time I gained something so different from it. That's what good literature does. I've already shared with the channel so much about the negative visualization that is a tactic of Stoicism that Aurelius represents so well as he pictures, envisions, tries to feel deeply the death of his child every single night, even though it hasn't happened, so that he can be more present and grateful when he is with him. That changed my parenting. But that's not the quote I'm going to do. I'm going to give you this one. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. Now, I love arguing about what a good man should be. I love philosophy. I love reading and learning and debating and talking and dialoguing, etc. It's wonderful. It's how I do learn, so that, though, I can act. It's a wonderful reminder not to get lost in the minutia of ideas, that they're worthless without enacting them. Virtue is action, not theory. You have to become the ideal you seek, not just talk about it, not just preach it. Really, it's a call for authenticity. So you can make fun of how popular this book or how cliche that concept might be, but it has changed my life, like so many of these have. And again, I am so grateful and unapologetic about loving and representing them. And the last book I have in this second section here is The Enchiridion by Epictetus. Epictetus is one of my absolute favorite people in history. I don't know if you can see it with the books here, but over here under the plant, I have a little carve out of him that you'll see in most of my videos. And as far as philosophies go, in terms of practical application, you know I love Stoicism. The quote here from the Enchiridion, which again, I should just quote you the whole book because my goodness, is it amazing. But this one especially, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. It almost sounds like it's just a bumper sticker, but if you take this seriously, again, it will truly change your life without exaggeration. If Aurelius is talking to us about authenticity, this is talking to us about contentment. Authenticity, contentment, empathy, these lessons are beyond valuable. You cannot control life, only how you respond to it. So let's move on to the third category here. We'll call this one embracing. And whether you are a writer or not, whether you are a lover of literature or not, every single person on the planet should read Annie Dillard's The Writing Life. This is her own story about her processes, what she has learned from being a world-class writer. The insight into her soul, into the depths of her heart here is fascinating and beautiful and useful. And it's a simple quote that I have, but I've always loved it. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. We should know this. This isn't a hard understanding, but it is such an important reminder, again, to remain grounded, to be present. I always think of the other quote when I think of this one, that the quality of our thoughts determines the quality of our lives. That's all we are. We are our thoughts, and we are our day-by-day processes. If you're waiting for those unique moments in life, those peaks, those pillars, you're not excited about anything until you get to go on the next vacation or until the weekend comes, you're missing it. Each moment is magic, and how you view each moment, each day, how you choose to spend it, how you choose to think about it, how present you are, determines the quality of your life. It's what it all adds up to be. As they say, eternity is hidden inside today. Love, 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 love. Okay, next is someone that, man, I was pretty cliche. I fell in love for a period of time with Bukowski. I read every single poem that he wrote and each of his novels. There is something so raw, so unbelievably vulnerable about Bukowski, no matter how much you might dislike him as a person. This is where you have to separate the art from the artist. And under this category of embracing life, the quote is, "Find what you love and let it kill you." This is one of the collections of poems. I actually couldn't find the collection that it comes from, but I believe it's from Love is a Dog from Hell. But what does this quote mean? It means total devotion to your passions. Don't hold back. Go all the way. Again, you only have today. You only have this moment, this life. Don't be embarrassed by what you love or what you care about or what you want to pursue. Of course, if you're not hurting yourself or someone else, but otherwise, go for it. So let's move on to the man, Hemingway. And though my favorite book of Hemingway is probably The Old Man and the Sea, For Whom the Bell Tolls, which I love this old 1940 edition, is probably the most masterful storytelling from Hemingway. Just as a memory, I was in creative writing class when I was 16, and we read, the first time I was ever introduced to Hemingway, his short story, Hills Like White Elephants. I think that's the name. And it was like Emerson said, collect all the words and sentences in all your readings that have been to you like the blast of a trumpet. The writing in Hills Like White Elephants was like the blast of a trumpet. I didn't know people could do this. I didn't know this existed. It set in motion in me such a desire to seek out beauty in the form of the written word. It became all-consuming to me. It's probably the catalyst that led me to reading the thousands of books I have read at this point, seeking those trumpet blast moments, and this book has them. My favorite line is this: "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for, and I hate very much to leave it." It seems simple, right? And it kind of goes along with death acceptance. I hate very much to leave it. This idea that even amidst horror, which to many of us is death, the end of things, the end of experience, especially if you're in love with life. Life's beauty endures. You don't have to be a part of it anymore. It's okay. I think it can transcend just death and be about living in a world that isn't perfect, that does have so much suffering. And yes, we should have empathy and work to change it, but we should still look where we can for the bright lights in it. And in doing so, you create this loyalty to existence itself. Man, what a thing that is. What an idea. What a concept to wrestle with and to discover. Let's move on to one that I know most of you who follow my channel will know, and that is Bertrand Russell. Probably the greatest influence on me early on in my agnosticism, in my atheism to certain God concepts. This book, a wonderful book, is the collected writings of Bertrand Russell. But the source of the quote I'm going to read you is from The Conquest of Happiness. And he says this: "The good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge." Again, you might feel like you could just see that on a Hallmark card, and it's one of those things that just sounds deep but is kind of simple and basic. But coming from Bertrand, from understanding his background and the message he was trying to get out there to the people he was trying to get it to, despite the world of religion, I actually found this so very meaningful. First, it seems to emphasize to me that both wisdom and compassion need to work together. We need balance. Why do we seek truth? Is it just some cold deconstruction? Or is it a labor of love towards life itself, or even toward humanity? Truth without love is cruelty, is another quote that I don't know who it goes to. And love without truth is blindness. You need these two together. That's power. But moving on, Next, we have another book that I think everybody should read. And unfortunately, and I'm just going to go order a new copy right now, I couldn't find mine. So my placeholder is Christopher Hitchens' Letters to a Young Contrarian, which we can go ahead and put aside because the book I'm actually talking about is Letters to a Young Poet. The advice in that book is gorgeous. And here's my favorite line. Let everything happen to you. We could stop there. I love that. Let everything happen to you. It's about embracing life in its fullness, to its complete ends. But it goes on. Beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. There's so much here that we can gain from both the good and the bad, similar to that necessity for chaos to be able to be truly creative, and also just keep going, not to give up, that there's always something else to discover, some other part of life yet to have happen. No feeling is final. Talk about, again, an awareness of being present and mindful and content. This will pass. This feeling will not last forever. To know that in those moments, there's nothing more important. Much of what I've shared with you is essentially a guide to how to suffer well, because suffering is inevitable. And again, all we can control is how we react to it. There's a lot of advice here for how we should be thinking about that and then acting that out. The next is the Tao Te Ching, which you've heard me say before. In terms of a spiritual text or religious text, although you could consider this truly just philosophical, this is probably my favorite. Very short, doesn't take much. There's deeper versions where you can read and get more, but I like this one. This is the one I'll have linked below. The softest things in the world overcome the hardest things in the world. Gentleness and persistence will defeat brute force. It is a very Eastern idea. We see it acted out in pacifism, and sometimes to our Western mind it can look so weak. Don't you know there's a time for battle? Rise up, fight the good fight. And of course, there's a time and place for everything, but giving due notice and awareness to the softer parts of life, to finding the more gentle answer, at least first, is so beautiful. And then going as far as to understand that oftentimes, despite the outward appearance or the phrasing or the ideas behind things, it is really often the best approach and the strongest approach, ironically. And we see this in tons of ideas, like the pen being more powerful than the sword. But the pen represents what? Knowledge. And how does one find knowledge? Humility. Humility is that soft thing that leads to knowledge, a soft thing in and of itself that is actually power. This is a humbling for me. This is a balance that I need to keep in mind. This is a wonderful check to pride, the slow, patient power of truth versus the everyday dominance of life. How beautiful. Now, the next one, again, someone we need to separate the art from the artist. Don't ever read the personal letters of James Joyce. It's very hard for me to enjoy him after that. But maybe my favorite book of all time is A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. You know what? I might have read this more than Meditations, actually. And the last time that I read it, I actually listened to it because they had Colin Farrell do the audiobook. Wow. So amazing. That book is a coming-of-age story about a young man named Stephen Dedalus that I saw myself in very much growing up. First time I read that book was, I believe, at 15 or 16. And I didn't even know how much it would resonate. You know, the first time that I read it, it was about the beauty of becoming an artist and the struggle. I didn't catch that all the while he was fighting the religious side of himself. And during my deconstruction was another of the times that I read it, and I felt like that young boy again, experiencing life in this strange and seemingly impossible decision of what way to go, what's expected of you, what's comfortable, the fear and indoctrination of religion versus the calling of creativity and art and personal meaning. But I forgot to even share the quote with you. Welcome, O life, I go to encounter for the millionth time the reality of experience. It's about embracing the rawness of being alive, of existence. It's a heroic acceptance of what is, full, purposeful, conscious engagement with this one life. So, how do we end this all? With a book that I came across at 14, which is when I started reading. This is one of the first books, like a longer book that I remember getting through, even though it's a collection of poems. and it is Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. The deep romantic that I was at 14 when I thought I was in love for the first time. As they say when the songs on the radio begin to make sense. Picked up this book, this very one, and read through it over the course of a few days, probably in between writing notes to my girlfriend, probably stealing lines. And oh, how I was moved. And I have the perfect quote for us to end with today. And it is, "Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes." You may have heard this before, it's quite popular, especially that last part. And it's such a poet thing to say, this acceptance that I am inconsistent. No one can be consistent, and you know me, I love nothing more than consistency in terms of thought and argumentation and philosophy. But when I look back over everything that I love and everything that I've read and everything that I have ever thought or been or identified with, I'm a contradiction. I'm a hypocrite. And of course, acting out of hypocrisy is one thing, but who we are, how life hits us, how we interpret this world, where we find meaning and balance and love and contentment is complex. Even in sharing these 22 ideas, I bet some of them absolutely contradict each other. But that's okay because they each have their place in my heart, in my life experience, and who I am. It's permission to be impossible. It's an understanding of one's own evolution. I contain multitudes. That's the richness of life. If you are so bogged down in trying to curate a perfect identity of yourself that fits so neatly in a box with a perfect little label, you're going to lose. You're going to miss out. Be everything all at once. Chase ideas that go in separate directions and then cross back past each other. It's such a part of life, and it's okay, and it's better than okay. Embrace it. It's beautiful. That's what that quote means to me. And that's why I think after covering 21 probably contradicting ideas, it was a good one to close on. So that's it. This is as personal as it gets for me. These are the things I love and who made me who I am. I have a deep attachment to each one of these works, each one of these people, each one of these quotes, each one of these ideas and concepts. And if you watch this and you just find one that you like or you get inspired to go pick up just one of these books, my work is done. And again, I hope to show it to you as a thank you for the last 2 years. So, again, thank you sincerely. And as always, keep thinking. I wanted to personally thank my top tiers of support, my Iconoclast, Ann, Boris, GVI, Jimmy, Joe, Kaboga, Matthew, Perry, Sean, and Steve, my Humanist Heroes, Craig, James, Jared, Christy, and Matthew, my Atheist Advocates, Adquitar, Caleb, Dan, David, Drew, Jeff, Jeffrey, Julie, Malcolm, Paul, Sparky, and Thomas, as well as all of my Secular Scholar patrons. If you believe in the mission of this channel or you just enjoy its content, please consider joining these fine people.